Sometimes there comes a time when life hurts you so much that the law, the police, and justice lose all meaning to you. In 1984, one of the most shocking moments in American history took place. A father, in front of television cameras, shot his son's rapist. No one could forget that moment, because it wasn't just a murder, it was revenge burning in a father's heart. Now be quiet and listen carefully to this true story. It was a warm summer morning in Louisiana. The air was clear, the sky was cloudless, and the streets of the city were quiet. Gary Plauché went to work at the same time every morning. He worked at a radio station, and he was a familiar, kind man. Life flowed slowly but steadily. For him, happiness was just coming home and hearing his children laugh. His son Jody was his favorite, a golden-haired, pure, beautiful boy who enjoyed life. Gary rode his bike with him and took him to the park on Sundays. Karate lessons were an important part of Jody's life. After each lesson, he would happily show his father the moves he had learned. "Look, Dad, I'm so strong now," he would say. Gary would laugh and reply, "You're my hero, boy." Their relationship was built on love and trust. Everything was normal. Until one day, life tested them. Jody's coach, Jeff Doucet, seemed like a sincere person at first glance. The parents loved him, the children respected him, but Gary never saw the darkness hidden in him. Doucet gradually became closer to the family. He would sometimes come and pick Jody up from home, invite her to games and movies. To everyone else, it was just a normal friendship, but this man had other intentions. In February 1984, Jody went to class and never came back. Hours passed, the sun set, but the child was gone. At first, everyone was calm. "He's probably with his friends," they said. But as night fell, everything changed. A feeling had awakened in Gary. It was fear. The phone rings wouldn't stop. Neighbors went searching. The police were called. Streets, forest lanes, even sewer pipes were searched. Everyone was mobilized in one direction. A few days later, the police suspected Jody's coach. Doucet was no longer in town. His car had also disappeared. Panic grew in the family. Gary couldn't believe his eyes. "How could he touch my son?" he shouted. At that moment, he had already become a different person. Days passed, but there was no news. Gary would go into his son's room every evening, look at his toys, sit in a corner and cry quietly. A week later, the police reported Jody had been found. He had been seen in a motel in California. But the joy of this news did not last long, because Jody was no longer the child he had been. He had been held captive, exploited. It was as if a piece of him had been lost. Gary hugged his son, but the emptiness in those eyes burned him. For the first time in his life, he felt justice delayed. Jeff Doucet was arrested. The televisions broadcast this news over and over again. Americans were terrified. But for Gary, this news meant nothing. He thought only one thing. He almost destroyed my child. Anger was growing in his heart. He could not sleep at night, and in the morning he did not recognize himself in the mirror. There was only one goal in his eyes: revenge. A few days later, the news spread that Doucet would be brought to Louisiana by plane. Hundreds of journalists would gather at the airport. When Gary heard this news, it seemed as if time stood still for a moment. He thought for a long time. Yes, it was not true, but sometimes justice, not law, gives pain. He had already made up his mind. That day, Gary put on his black hat, put on his old jacket, and went to the airport alone. There he went to a telephone booth, lowered his head. There was noise around, but a deep silence inside him. He touched the gun in his pocket. His hands were shaking, but in his heart the decision was unchangeable. The plane landed. The police were taking Doucet out. There was no fear or remorse on his face. The camera lenses moved. Gary pretended to be talking on the phone. He closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered his son's tears. And at that moment, a gunshot rang out, just a single bullet. Jeff Doucet fell to the ground. The camera recorded everything. All of America was watching this event live. Gary put the gun down, calmly said, "He deserved it." The police immediately detained him. Although the incident happened in seconds, these seconds were engraved in history, writing their own history. Television stations broadcast this news for days. One said, "The father is a hero." The other said, "The law was broken." The society was divided in two, but everyone knew one thing. Gary's heart was not silent that day. The trial began. Gary's lawyers said that this was not a cold-blooded murder. This was the result of deep psychological trauma. Gary himself chose to remain silent. He said nothing. In the courtroom, he uttered a single sentence. "I wanted to protect my son, but it was too late." The judge did not send him to life in prison, just a suspended sentence and community service, because everyone understood this was more than a crime. It was a father's broken heart. After the incident, Gary lived his life away from people for many years. He thought about the same scene every night, the sound of a gunshot, the sound of his son, the silence. He never said he regretted it. But one day a journalist approached him and asked, "If you could relive that moment again, would you do the same thing?" Gary looked down at the ground and said, "Yes, but I want no one to be like me." This incident was discussed for years. The boundary of the law and the boundary of human emotion collided. Some said that revenge does not mean justice. Others said that sometimes justice remains only on paper. But the truth is that that day, a person inside a father died. In its place was only a silent void. Jody grew up, became an adult. Years later, he said he understood his father. "He just wanted to protect me, but he lost himself." This sentence is perhaps the saddest part of the whole story, because Gary saved his son, but at the same time he separated him from his childhood. This story is not just a crime story. It is the story of a man caught between justice and revenge. Sometimes life asks questions that the law leaves unanswered. Gary Plauché died in 2014. His story is still remembered in films and articles. Some call him a hero, others a tragic figure, but everyone agrees that he showed how deep a father can sink. Yes, sometimes justice drowns in silence, and revenge eats a person from the inside.